So I've been seeing a lot of videos around on YouTube and Reddit and sometimes even X, or formerly Twitter. How do you turn an older Dell Optiplex, or really any office computer, into a functioning gaming computer in 2024? Well, if you're thinking the same thing, how do you do that? You're in the right place, because I'm going to show you how to do that in this video. Let's get started. Alright, so before we get into the upgrades that have been done to this computer, and some upgrades you can do to a computer like this if you were to pick one up, let's go over the specs of this specific one first. So up top we have the Cooler Master 400 watt power supply. Moving over to the right we have a DVD drive, because you can never go wrong with a DVD drive. And before I go any farther, I just want to apologize for that loud fan noise you probably hear to the left. That's a dehumidifier. I gotta leave that running. It's very humid, so I gotta leave it on. So I'm sorry about that, but it is what it is. So moving down here, we have the processor with the CPU cooler here. Under the CPU cooler, we have a i5-4590, and moving over to the iPad here, here are the specs of the i5-4590 if you're interested. A 22 nanometer quad core, not hyper-threaded processor running at 3.3 gigahertz with a boost clock of 3.7, TDP of 84 watts, discontinued a couple of years ago. Could support up to 32 gigabytes of RAM, running at up to 1600 megahertz. Actually, yeah, up to 1600 megahertz. I just had a brain fart. Anyways, comes with integrated graphics, HD 4600, which are absolute hot shit. Don't use them if you don't have to, because they suck. So there are your specs for the 4590. And moving over to the right here, we have the what I believe to be 16 gigabytes of RAM, running at 1333 megahertz, because they are different sticks running at different speeds. So yeah, not the fastest, but it does work. Moving down, well, actually moving to the left, we have a single, I believe is an 80 millimeter exhaust fan with not a single intake fan, so that creates some negative air pressure. Also, because the power supply is an exhaust fan as well, definitely going to be pulling in some air from the front, so just do keep that in mind if you were to put a higher TDP graphics card in here, the lack of airflow in this case. So that's definitely one thing to keep in mind if you were to go down this road of a gaming computer. Moving down here, we have a GTX 660 blower style, as you can see. This is a 1.5 gigabyte variant, so definitely not going to be running most modern games with only a gig and a half of VRAM. And then moving over here, we have one of Dell's masterpieces. Apparently it's an 8-pin that powers the motherboard, as you can kind of see on in there. But you can't just use an 8-pin PCIe connector. You have to use an adapter that converts a 24-pin down to whatever the hell Dell likes to use. Definitely something to keep in mind, because the stock Dell power supply definitely is not running a high-powered GPU with no PCIe expansion capabilities, because there's no PCIe power on those power supplies for the most part. Anyways, moving down here even more, we have a 128 gigabyte PNY SSD. There you go, kind of see it there. So yeah, that's pretty much the specs of this system here, and let's go over possible upgrades you can do and pricing if you were to go down this route of a gaming computer, shall we? First up, we have storage. Now, a 128 gigabyte SSD definitely will not be storing all your games, but it is definitely enough to store your operating system and a couple of applications such as Google Chrome, Steam, Discord, Epic Games, and all that. If you want more storage, obviously you would have to go with a higher capacity SSD or hard drive, or even external hard drive or SSD. Now, 128 gigabyte SSDs are pretty cheap, going for less than 20 bucks a lot of the time, new and used. As you can see there, it's 13 bucks. You go up there, well, that's 21. You got 17, 15, 14. These are brand new, so they really don't cost much. Now, if you want a little bit more processing power, you would want to probably go for the i7 4790. If I can click the fucking thing. There we go. Now, the i7 4790 is slightly different from the i5 that is currently in here, which is the 4590. Now, with this i7, you get hyper-threading, so you get 8 threads instead of only 4. You get a higher turbo frequency, higher base frequency, same TDP, pretty much the same everything else. Same RAM capacity, same RAM speed, same graphics for... Actually, is it the same graphics? Is it the same speed? Let's see here. Not too far. Alright, your iGPU is running at 500 megahertz faster on the i7 than with the i5, because as you can see here, max frequency is 1.5 for the i5, and then it's 1.2 for the i7. So you get marginally better integrated graphics with the i7, but they still suck. So to combat that, let's go for a different graphics card here, such as the 1060. Now, 1060 is definitely not going to be running modern AAA games at 120 FPS or whatever, but it is a pretty cheap graphics card, as you can see here, for only 66 bucks. $26, I personally don't buy that. Sure, it's from Newegg, but 26 bucks for 1060? I don't know about that. Now, if you were to get a 1060, I would go for the 6GB variant, because it has, well, more VRAM than a 3GB variant, so it can run more games. Now, it is getting to be a little bit dated, being that it was released a couple years ago, in 2016, but that doesn't mean it can't run some games. Now, according to this chart, it's similar in terms of a RX 580. It is slightly worse than an RX 580, and it's slightly better than a 690 and an RX 480. So obviously it's not a powerhouse, but it will run decent amount of modern games, albeit at the lower settings. Now, here's the thing. I believe these cards have a PCIe power requirement. Does it say it here anywhere? Yes. One 6-pin power connector. Kind of like what this has right here. One 6-pin power connector. So chances are a 400 watt power supply similar to this unit will be perfectly fine for something like this. Now, obviously, you could probably get better cards than a 1060 for a similar price, or if you want to save up a little bit more, you can get an even better graphics card. But at this point, you might as well save up for a better computer, because the 4th generation i5 is, well, 4th generation anything Intel, it is getting to be quite dated at this point, considering it was launched in 2014. That's 10 years ago, as of recording this video. So, obviously, it's pretty old at this point, but it can actually still run some modern games. Now, moving on to RAM. Here we have, I would not recommend this, first of all. Single channel, no. If you want the best, I would go with dual channel, 1600 megahertz of DDR3. Now, brand doesn't exactly matter too terribly much. As you can see, they are cheap. You know, 17 bucks brand new, 17, 16, 13. It's pretty cheap. And obviously you can get 32 gigs if you want a little bit extra, which really is not much at all anyway, you know, price-wise. But looking here on Newegg, we have $27. Actually, no, that's higher than that. So you're just paying extra for more speed you cannot use, because the maximum supported is 1600 megahertz, not 1800 megahertz. But you can still buy DDR3 brand new, apparently. So, the more you know. Now, if you wanted a computer like this, this is a Dell Optiplex 9020. I believe it's called the Mid Tower, because this is the full-size tower, not small form factor, not the ultra-small form factor. This is the full-size desktop. Well, full-size desktop. It's not full size compared to, say, a regular gaming computer, but in terms of the Dell Optiplex, it is full size. Now, this computer comes with 8 gigs of RAM, no hard drive, and a 4570, which is a very similar processor to the 4590, just a tiny bit weaker. Nothing really much. You can get it for $39.99 with $20 shipping or best offer. So really, you can still pick these computers up for pretty cheap these days if you really, really wanted to. So, with that being said, what are my final thoughts on this? So basically, my final thoughts on this machine would be, well, if you really need something to play some games on, you don't have a lot of money, would this work? Yes, it would work, but you need to know your limits. You need to know what this thing can do, because there's a lot this thing could still do, but there's also a lot this thing cannot do, especially in the CPU department, because not only is it older, so it's not as powerful, it's missing some of the more modern security and instructions, so it cannot run some modern games. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. Now, another thing to keep in mind is airflow. Only a single, what I believe to be 80mm exhaust fan with the power supply, but you come up front, no intake fan. And albeit this is a pretty small case, so not a whole lot of room for airflow to begin with. I mean, you could put a fan in the front, but honestly, probably wouldn't help much considering how small this case is to begin with. And there's really not a lot of room for it either, especially if you get a regular, standard, not modular power supply. You're going to have all these extra cables here to tuck in the front. You're really not going to have much room for a fan. So if you do go for something like this, keep in mind your limitations, especially on room as well. Room is a very important thing I forgot to mention about graphics cards as well. This case is not exactly very wide or long or anything in that sense. It's not a very big case. Now, here we have a ruler, not a ruler, duh, measuring tape. If we go from one end, maybe I'm stupid and I can't use a ruler. Okay, that's not very much room. Let's just use my iPad as an example here. This is a 10.9-inch iPad Air. Yeah. There's not a whole lot of room in this case. So yeah, keep that in mind. If you definitely do want to get one of these, space is definitely not concerning, but a constraint in this system. Now, you may have noticed SSD placement isn't good, but it's an SSD, it's fine. All right, I'll stop ranting. I'll actually get to the final thoughts now. Final thoughts, should you buy one? Yes and no. Comes down to what you want to use it for and that kind of stuff. If you want something cheap, sure. If you want to play games like Call of Duty on it, that's not going to happen. It's just not going to work. Trust me, I tried. But without me ranting on it anymore, this is probably already a 15-20 minute video. I'm going to stop ranting. Hopefully you actually made it to the end of the video. If you did, congratulations for you. Not many people make it to the end of the video. So if you did, thank you. And if you liked it, leave a like. If you want to ask me something or tell me something, feel free to drop a comment. And if you liked the video, comment, subscribe, and share. And yeah, I will see you around in the next video, hopefully. Bye-bye.